Thank you, my brother Prime Minister, of course, my other distinguished brothers and sisters, Secretary General CARICOM, Brother Bradford, the Attorney General of Barbados, the President of the CDB, Sedima, RSS, all my brothers and sisters and members of the press, because you are so important for what's getting the message out as to what is taking place in the individual countries that have been hit badly. To my brother, I just wish to say that having passed through this road before, in 2004, I know how lonely it was. And listening to you through the WhatsApp messages before the major destruction took place, I could feel that tension, the same feeling that I had several years ago. And when the morning came and we heard everything was down, it was that empty feeling returned. And so we identify with you and the Dominican people in every sense of the word. And a good thing, colleagues and brothers and sisters, I think, as the Prime Minister just said, this present situation and the fact that we have so many countries that have been hit hard, and Dominica, even CNN has in fact said you're the worst, has brought that element of Caribbean family spirit that we sometimes would love to see more of. And sometimes it is said, sometimes in adversities we get a lot of good messages. And we didn't bargain for this, but I think it is that spirit of Caribbean family that I believe that we all love to see, and we want to see it not just in a period of destruction and disaster, but on a permanent basis, because the only person we could depend on is ourselves, you know. You see what's happening outside there now. Sometimes I listen to the news and you never get the impression that Dominica was hit, because all you're hearing is about other countries and other places and cities. So we, sisters and brothers, have to depend on ourselves more than ever before. Strangely enough, with the Secretary General initiative and CARICOM initiative in general, we decided to take tour all the countries that were hit hard. I mean, no, my brother was in Barbuda, identifying where they're pain. So we visited the BVI, Tortola, then Anguilla, then Barbuda, where we stopped off in Antigua, of course. And then we went on to Turks and Caicos and the Bahamas, Rock Island, and we're talking about all this destruction taking place. Lo and behold, we landed in Grenada. I had to go back to Barbados for that CDB activity. My brother had me in Barbados. And I could not leave. And that is when we realized this thing is not a simple thing that we are facing. And that the whole issue of how do we move forward from here onwards, I think is something that we have to think very seriously about. The question about what happens after disaster, we must rethink, in my view, the whole process. How do we integrate the efforts of the private sector or financial institutions, government, and all institutions in a post-disaster event? I still believe that we are literally doing guesswork with not sufficient integration in the process. I believe this whole thing tells us there must be deeper planning. And Secretary General, it seems to me that one of the major issues the CARICOM heads is how do we prepare appropriately? It's not if, right? It's not if, it's when. So the question is, a lot of the things maybe Dominica is going through today probably should not have to go through it. There should almost be a system that takes off automatically. So I'm convinced that we have to do more than we have done. Another point I want to make, as we went through, I'm sure Brother Bradford and all of us who went visit those islands, something struck us. In the midst of all the destruction, Prime Minister, in an area, all the buildings underground, there were 1 or 2 buildings remain as if the hurricane did not pass there. What does that tell us? In fact, I think it was Turks and Caicos told us about an area where, because of a previous hurricane, all the houses were built back at a certain standard. The hurricane passed there again. All the buildings that were not built back after that hurricane were flattened, and the ones that were built back stood up. That tells us the whole question of building code. Regional building code, not just a Grenada one or Barbados one, a regional, because colleagues, as I said, is not if, it is when. But we're here. We're here because we know for the Dominican people, Prime Minister, we know for you, sometimes the physical damage is extremely difficult to be able to, the psychological damage. To me, what I went through, that was more than the physical. And I know every Prime Minister, every brother or sister that called me then or showed up and identified with our pain sent an important message to my recovery and the people of Grenada's recovery. And therefore, while we're not doing anything here physically, we believe we're here to demonstrate that spirit of love, camaraderie, and the willingness for us to join with you in the rebuilding effort of your beautiful country. As I drove past there, I cannot believe, because you know for years Dominica is a place I visited from as a little boy. The first place I played cricket for my country was in Dominica. And I was asking, where's this botanical garden? I asked the SG. He said me botanical gardens. There's nothing called botanical gardens. We have to revive that. It was like some place where you started burning bushes and all dry woods you saw. This is something else. It's amazing what nature can do. But certainly, and finally, I want to make this point. In times of adversity, in times of national problems, the necessity for all citizens to join hands to build is critical. I make a call like I did when I was chairman of the OECS and I came here, that for our brothers and sisters from the opposition in the country to join hands with the government, and I make a similar call, the Prime Minister, joining hands with the opposition. There is enough time for the political divide. I remember in Grenada, we made a call, and initially there were, in fact, a willingness to come together. Later on, it divided again, but that's for another reasons. But I think it's so crucial for all the citizens of the country. Like what we say, tout moon. Is that a Dominican slang? Right. We need everybody in this exercise. So Prime Minister, to you and the people of Dominica, we just want to wish you the best and to say we are going to be there with you, hand in hand, in the entire reconstruction. Right now, it's about immediate emergency needs and support, the food, the drink, the water, the different basics, medical services. But the major task going to be ahead, the reconstruction of the country. We'll offer our expertise or experiences that we went through. And so, you know, and something else, I'm a believer in faith. A firmly believer. Things that happened in my life, I realized faith plays an important part. We are probably the only country in the region who really flattened our entire country. I'm chairman of CARICOM at this time. I'm also chairman of the CDB. So my brother, he has me there to deal with. If he's giving you trouble, just talk to me. And also chairman of small states. This is significant. I say this, why is that happening? Next month we go to Washington and there's good revenue there. Seems to me that's an important forum to maximize the message of utilizing serious concessionary support in building resilience in our country and dealing with the whole inevitable consequences of catastrophes. And to make the message, sisters and brothers, that we cannot have people tell us that we must be graduated away from concessionary financing, when in one stroke we have gone back to zero. Grenada, 200% of GDP in 3 hours. Your case was 5 hours. 3 hours. We were set back to a road absolute recovery from day one. So, to tell us that we have done well, we have now, what, middle income, I don't know how to define it, and that we no longer should get concessionary finance makes no sense. It's a farce. And we have to call the bluff as it is. But we need to have a united force, united platform to send the message powerfully. So, Prime Minister, you have our support. You have our care, our love, our deep hurt and pain that you go through. You have it. And I believe that is a critical factor as we move forward together in rebuilding Dominica and the rest of the Caribbean country. Now, colleagues, I just want to make one last point. As we said, cabinet meeting yesterday, the cabinet members insisted that the aid we give the region, we must give the same amount to Cuba. They insisted. Because sometimes I believe we forget Cuba. Cuba was there for all of us. They were essentially responsible for bringing back my electricity system as quickly as it came back. And every time we have had a problem, Cuba has been the #1 participants in our recovery and our support. So I just want to make the point here today, when I'm standing here, to say also we must concern ourselves also with what's taking place in our sister Caribbean country, Cuba. Prime Minister, you're standing tall. Keep it up, my brother. Take care.
I'm not sure if any questions for the chairman. No. Okay, chairman, you.
Yeah, sure.
Please.
Mr. Prime Minister, I know your country, Grenada, has been very familiar with tragedies like this. I think back as far as 2004 with Hurricane Ivan. What kind of advice can you give directly to them? In your case, I think 12 people had died, 90% of the country destroyed. What type of advice can you give to Dominica?
Well, certainly, I think one of the things we have to do is to use or leverage as Caribbean people to send that message of the necessity to support Dominica in this time. Sometimes we may not have the necessary material resources, but we have the connection. And I think as a regional body, we can utilize that collective support to make the case for Dominica. I also pointed out to the Prime Minister a while ago that we have some serious lessons that we can share with him and Dominica about the recovery process. And I gave him a bit of the rationale behind it, but of course I'll be going through in more detail and I'll be sending documentation. And there are people with certain skills from different parts of the Caribbean region. They were not necessarily Grenadians, from different countries, OECS and the Caribbean family, who came in and we established what we call a reconstruction agency. And we gave them a mandate through Parliament. In other words, not every aspect of this necessarily can be implanted in Dominica, but a good portion of it can be used effectively. I think that's a way to mobilize people at all levels and to work on the whole question of reconstruction. We had the church's involvement. We had the business community. We had the NGO community. They all were involved in the process of the reconstruction. I think that's another message that I certainly want to share. But I also make the point that I believe one of the key factors in recovery is a psychological one. And we were able to amass a number of psychologists and counselors, because we had policemen and nurses and different persons who are supposed to be involved in the recovery process. And they were completely destroyed. So you're asking a policeman or a nurse to come and take care of people, and they themselves are in serious state. So they need that sort of support system. So the counseling support is another area I would certainly advance as far as that is concerned too. There are clearly other things we can mention, but I suppose I gave you 3.
Can you describe any immediate aid that you've extended on behalf of Grenada?
Oh no, well, Grenada has already made announcement of support for Dominica. We have done a number of things. There have been mass mobilization in terms of all the immediate needs. We have security forces here. The airport people sent up 14 of their people to work with the airport people here. The police force separately outside of the SSU unit. Different aspects, but we also provided some monetary support. I wanted to make sure that the announcement came from Grenada because the cabinet met yesterday. I could tell the Prime Minister privately, but I don't think I should share it publicly. They must chastise me in Grenada if I do that here, and I didn't make the announcement in Grenada first. But we recognize that, and that's not going to be all. As the needs arises, despite our limited resources, I believe that we have no choice. I cannot see us saying that we don't have any money to give. And I compare it to a hungry man outside there, and we don't have a lot. We have a plate of food. And we may not necessarily need all the food. And not only, we need to have that quality at the time the neighbor is hungry. So reduce that. Make sure we have something there. Cut off the amount, the portion, and let the man have some. The same thing I say about money. We cannot say, I hate that any one of us would say, I don't have any money to give. If it is said so, then none of us will have anything to give. I honestly believe all of us have a responsibility. I can't say how much each one should give, but when Grenada was destroyed, the little children in Barbados, I never forget that, Owen Arthur called me to say that the children in Barbados were giving their lunch money to the principals in schools in Barbados to send to Grenada for the children in Grenada. That's the kind of message. It might be $2, but it sends a powerful message. It's not how much you give, but giving where it hurts.
And final
Okay.
question, Mr.
Yes.
Prime Minister, if I may. What is your official response to any first world country that does not believe in climate change?
Well, I wouldn't say just first world. I have some of my friends in third world and second world and last world who also don't seem to understand. I'm a scientist by profession, basically, and therefore I can't deny science. It's there to see. You're not talking how you feel. It is about what's happening around us. 40 years ago, we might be talking hurricane 100 miles per hour. 30 years ago, we may be talking 120. When Grenada, 13 years ago, we talked 135, 140, 165. We better realize when we're dealing with resilience, we better talk being resilient for 200 miles per hour. So I don't understand anyone. Maybe for political reason you make the statement, but I say deep down, I don't see how you could deny the fact that climate change is real. The sea temperature rises is there to see. And everyone knows how hurricane gains its speed. The air, the hot air obtained through the sea temperature causes the hurricane. That's physics, it's there to see. I don't know how you can deny it. So all I say is I feel sorry for them. Okay, thank you. Thank you. All right, my brother. Thank you, man.